You may not consider yourself one for conspiracy theories. You easily tackle misinformation online, and extremism is something you only hear about on the news. But the impact of these developments is much closer than you think. Social media algorithms, which most of us use on a daily basis, are designed to create revenue. Given that heightened emotions on social media platforms often lead to increased engagement and subsequently more revenue, they wield significant influence over what we encounter. This growing phenomenon is having a direct impact on the perceptions of democratic institutions and trust in science. At worst, it has the ability to attempt to overthrow or disrupt democratically elected governments. Extreme political narratives have been rising across Europe, and these narratives influence mainstream political discourses and policies. It's about you, me, and the lives we lead. As a generation born in a time before the internet, there was a growing concern for those in the middle age. Not being digital natives, this group often still use traditional routes to gain information, such as print media, TV, and radio, but at the same time are engaging in online media. Without the tools to navigate, they rely on their perception of credible sources, making them easy targets for extremist narratives and misinformation through social media. This group of middle-aged adults between the ages of 45 and 65 is under-researched, but the impact of them being drawn into extremist content may have significant consequences on political discourse, democratic processes, and institutions, as they form a large group of people who may also be in decision-making positions, such as managers and policymakers, therefore have a direct influence on those who live in democracies like you and me. In this podcast, we will talk with experts in the field of research surrounding conspiracy theories and misinformation, joining both strength and knowledge in the newly founded Smidge project. Research centres, universities and NGOs from all over Europe will shine their light on new research findings and counter-narratives, education and also training resources that are being developed to address fake news and misinformation.
Hello and welcome to Smidgecast. My name is Sara Wilford and I am the scientific coordinator for the Smidge project. Today I have two special guests with me, Jason Lee from Montfort University and Sian Hamlett from Hamlett Films. And today we'll be discussing the counter-narratives that have been created within the project. First, however, could you introduce yourselves, please? First off, Jason.
Thank you, Sara. So, hi, everybody. I'm Jason Lee. I'm part of the Montfort University team, and I'm a co-investigator for the Smidge project, and I'm Professor of Film, Media and Culture.
Thank you, Jason. And Sian, would you like to say something about yourself, please?
Hi, yes, I'm Sian Hamlett. I'm the Managing Director, Exec Producer at Hamlett Films. Hamlett Films is a production company based in London, and we make educational content.
Thank you very much. So the first question I would like us to all discuss is, bearing in mind that our project is aimed at the 45 to 65 age group, and we wondered what was the primary aim of the counter-narrative videos and also taking into account this particular demographic?
I think looking at the evidence, we established early on that no one really globally had ever done research on this 45 to 65-year-old age group. And what we did with our colleagues, psychologists at UCLan Cyprus and colleagues in Kosovo and elsewhere, we did an analysis of the current kind of conspiracy videos that are already out there. So we gathered these together on our own internal website and did an analysis of the themes and content of these videos, which we know are making a negative impact on democracy. And we wanted to establish how we could counter this and just make a tiny bit of difference so people thought again before they plunged down the rabbit hole into conspiracy thinking. So from this analysis, we ascertained there was three themes we wanted to address in our counter-narrative videos. And these three themes were connected to areas including migration, immigration, which is still a hot topic, climate change as well, and vaccines. So collectively, we worked on these. We worked on the scripts with Hamlett Films, and Sian directed these films. And Sara and myself were there across the filming days for all the films that we made, which were counter narratives, taking, I think, a different and original approach because we know it's difficult to reach this type of audience.
Yes, and I have to say it was really, really good fun doing that. Sian, would you like to add anything further to this?
Yes, for us, it was a really interesting collaboration. And as a production company, working on an exciting original research project was a fantastic opportunity. For us, it was about being able to work really closely with the Smidge team and then bringing on board our filmmaking experience and always being mindful of the look and feel, keeping within budget, and always being directed by the Smidge team in terms of having that audience front of mind.
That's really interesting. Thank you. So, going on a little bit more about how the collaboration worked between Montfort University and Hamlett Films. So, can you explain a little bit more about how you worked together with the research team, how the scripting, the casting, direction, that sort of thing? If you could elaborate a little bit more on that experience.
Sorry, yeah. So I'll probably pass on to Sian in a minute about the casting because that was really exciting, that part of it. But initially, of course, we did the sort of brainstorming around the three themes that the wider consortium had decided on. And we knew we wanted humour. And Charles, who works for Sian, was our kind of delegated screenwriter with us. And collectively, with the DMU team and Sian's input, we worked really hard, I'm not exaggerating, on these scripts, like evenings, weekends, to hone down these scripts. So we came up with the humorous bits and the more empathetic bits when we have our lead characters, because we don't want to kind of go around dismissing people's points of view. We want to try and create empathy for our lead characters so people can understand why would someone go into that type of rabbit hole. So we produced a number of videos. One of them, the main one, I suppose, was called Family Tea, that's had different subtitles in various languages, including Greek. And we did a kind of spoof quiz show where the host of the show is actually a conspiracy theorist. And we did a kind of spoof radio phone in where people would ring in with different points of view to do with the themes of, like I said, migration, vaccines, and climate change. But we worked collaboratively initially on building up the scripts until we were really happy. And I must say, it was great working with the DMU team and Hamlett Films because we've all got strengths and weaknesses. I mean, for example, in a DMU team, Professor Ralph Hamzoui, who's a professor of media technology, he was great to have on board from the scientific perspective. So all the facts he would check and all of our perhaps assumptions about science, he would check. So we believe this has done a good job creating these collaboratively, and it was really good fun. We went down to Hamlett Films, we met Naz and the team down there, and I think it was Naz who originally came up with the personality profiles for our characters. So it was, yeah, a real collaborative and really good fun experience. I think Sara and myself would agree it's probably one of the best work experiences we've ever had, and that is not an exaggeration.
I would certainly agree with that. I mean, from my point of view, it was a whole new experience, new learning opportunity. And we all had the opportunity to sort of embrace that creative side of ourselves that we don't normally get an opportunity to actually do in our normal day-to-day life. So yeah, certainly from my point of view, that was absolutely great fun to learn and to involve myself in. Yeah.
The casting was just incredible. Sian did a really good job there. I just feel like, I've done films before and sometimes a bit on the hoof where you've got, just a limited budget, limited casting, but the casting for these productions was immensely thorough. I don't know if you want to say something about that process, Sian, because that was incredible. And it was collaborative as well.
I mean, for us, it was amazing. We make a lot of factual programs, but we also make dramas as well. And, what we know is it's not about elaborate sets. It's not about the costumes. What it's about is a really fantastic script which nails everything that we have to communicate. And then it's about casting, So for casting, we literally went through hundreds of applicants. And then we went down to a short list of around, I think, 30 options. But what we did, rather than us just moving forward and saying these are the people, we wanted Sara and Jason to be involved in that casting process. So we did online test tapes and we shared those with the Montfort team and we went through those together. And, sometimes we agreed, sometimes we disagreed. We all put different kind of ideas and thoughts on the table. And also what was important was how those actors would work together. So it's about their real personalities and how they might help and support each other. And we also had to balance, from my perspective as a director, because we wanted the performance, especially in Family Tea, to be very realistic. It was about that balance of not over-rehearsing. So you just have to time it right. So when they come on set, they're ready to go, but they're actors who will collaborate together. They will work with each other. And that's some of the best actors. And also actors who believe in the subject matter and are committed to it. So yeah, it was really exciting. We've never done such an extensive casting ever, but we knew that was really important. And Sara and Jason brought fantastic information to the table. And often it's normally just the director doing the casting, but we did this all together. And film work, especially when you make academic, educational material, you have to work very closely with your experts and your academic team. That's the way to make the best films.
Yeah, well, there were some really exciting opportunities within the creation of these character narratives. But what sort of challenges did you encounter in actually creating these and balancing that research insight and bringing in that narrative that we obviously did through the script writing? But what were the specific challenges that were directly relevant to this particular project, bearing in mind, again, that 45 to 65 age group, which is largely unrepresented?
I will give my kind of view on that. I think my nervousness, my anxiety might have been around the genres that we went for, in that a lot of what we were doing is comedy, and comedy, you don't know whether it hits home or not, particularly sort of transculturally, like I just said before about, like dubbing, or whether it's subtitles, and whether these jokes are going to fly. It was a London-based company, Sian's based in London. I'm originally from London, so you don't want to make it too kind of UK-centric. So thinking about the large consortium, which is, the Smidge project. Okay, we had the large consortium meetings, which you chair, Sara, and we had a lot of good feedback from the group, and we would share the scripts. Early on, we shared the scripts with colleagues, particularly at the University of Copenhagen, because they had experience of working in TV companies before, so they could give us feedback. But obviously, with anything new and anything original, you have this sort of like last minute fear of you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk, A, because you're not producing so-called factual videos, just stating the facts, saying, these are the facts about climate change. If we don't do something about it, the world is going in this direction. We've got to stop it. Preaching at people. So the expectation might be you must be a bit preachy, but B, the other expectation, you're playing with a genre which is a bit kind of like difficult, as I say, for you can't test it whether it lands because you've only got a limited budget. So yeah, both of those things were like the challenges for me, I think, and deadlines again within the project. I think that was very challenging, and I'm pleased to say that Charles, the screenwriter we work with closely at Hamlett, would give us more time than we might have expected. Like I said before, working weekends and evenings to really get things right. And of course, it's like in creative writing, you can't be precious about what you've done. You have to kind of leave out a lot of what you think could be good and could be fun. And you can't really judge your own work like that but also there is an aim to this project. Like, we could create the most interesting and funny dramas, but at the end of the day, there is an aim. There is a kind of scientific aim, as it were. So all of those things, I think, are challenges.
Thank you. Sian, would you want to add something to that?
The first time that Hamlet Films has worked on drama, and I was very apprehensive because, as Jason says, you've got to be aware that it's going to land. You have to cast really correctly. You have to make sure that those actors can deliver on the day. And that was another thing. We didn't have days and days to keep filming. They had to nail it. They had to get it right. I mean, our presenter across 2 of the comedies, she was from America. We were really lucky. We got her to fly in. She was fantastic. She did stand-up comedy, but she was also an actress. So we were just so lucky. Again, it was that casting process went on and on until we all knew we had the right person. Also, it was really important for me as a director to make sure that I was interpreting the scripts in the way that Jason and Sara wanted them made. So it was very important for me to have academics on the shoot with me. So I was really happy to have them next to me and to make sure that, I don't know, I was very happy as a director that I could visualize what you both wanted.
I appreciate that directors can be quite direct. You know, they want to control everything, which is quite reasonable. But what I loved about working with you, Sian, was that the director, you were so inclusive. You were always open to the new ideas, or trying something different and listening to what I had to say as an academic. And bear in mind that obviously you're the expert here when it comes to making films. So it felt really, really collaborative and inclusive, that you enabled our input on set, which I think is quite an unusual thing. And so, yeah, that was part of the joy of the experience, if you like.
I'd agree. And yeah, that inclusivity, we thought about that across the board, actually, didn't we, as well, in the casting, in the script, and this kind of thing. So yeah, we were very aware of diversity as well from that perspective. And yeah, I think we had enough time to do a number of takes and to take from those takes what we wanted. But I must mention Mitch as well in post-production, who, using graphics. And I remember, I was there on the quiz show day where we were literally in this sort of mock TV studio, where sort of grabbing at things that were going on around us and incorporating that, kind of almost like a live improvisation of like, let's film a bit of this, we can include that in there. So it's very kind of raw and direct, which I think engages audiences a bit more, because we had a behind the scenes little head to head with the guy acting the floor manager, trying to kind of harass the star of the show and rein her in, and all that was part of the comedy. And that was quite funny, the different levels of that. If you remember, Sian, take it up, do we want to take it up, see him jumping up and down, or take it down? So we did all different versions of that, and then we can just select which ones we think are appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting, actually, taking that comedy element a little bit further. So obviously we integrated humour in these non-traditional formats, the quiz show and so on. And we were trying to engage with that target demographic. So one of the questions, I suppose, is how was that decision made in order to use humour? I mean, there are obviously going to be some risks about using humour, particularly within some very contentious areas that we were looking at, climate change and immigration and vaccines, anti-vax to some extent. So how did that develop? And also, how did you take into account the potential risks of using humour in those very serious topic areas?
I read all the reports done by the consortium, so I saw, what different demographics in which country were saying what from the initial kind of quantitative data that we got from UCLA and Cyprus. So I was aware of what, position people were coming from, but I was also aware as a teacher of screenwriting that if you look at sort of major competitions, it's always comedy films that win the major competition, short films. Now, why is this? Because it engages people more, particularly on social media, where you've probably only got about 30 seconds to hook someone. And so, from that position, in terms of social media, it was felt as being a wise move. As I said before, still a bit of a risk, but it was from analysing the data, analysing the middle-aged group and what they are interested in. And I think all along we felt that some kind of mock quiz show where you could put forward facts, you could challenge certain misinformation, malinformation, conspiracy thinking in that kind of format. Because as we know, there are so many different genres of quiz shows and that kind of thing. I mean, The Chase is all over the world. It's a UK-based format, but I've seen it in Spanish and so on. So these are really popular types of shows, and to create your own unique one was good. And I think in terms of public discourse, the one that was set across the radio, which is almost like a trilogy of interrelated shows that we made, we were trying to push the boundaries a bit there, but also coming back to the facts. So we had a professor there who was stating the facts again and again and again. And we had this sort of conspiracy theorist who in himself was quite charismatic, because some of these people are. So we played a bit with stereotypes and comedy there, but we came back to the truth in the end. And I think you can speak truth through comedy. You know, I like the transgressive nature of it as well. You can break boundaries as well. And it attracts attention rather than, you know, the same old, same old. That's my view on it anyway.
Yeah, and from your research, you were very clear with us that it's not about preaching, it's not about patronising. And I think, you all took you were brave. We were going to go for humour and we made it work. And like you say, Jason, we were together on the day. We started it, we kind of upped the ante with the actors, and then we got to a point where we knew that would work. As Sara was mentioning, we shot in a green screen studio, so we had to plan in advance what we were going to create in AI. And we were so lucky that Mitch, who's a fantastic editor but works with latest technologies, could create in post-production this game show studio, which was absolutely brilliant. I think it worked really, really well, but it was a risk. We went for it, and that's what's exciting, isn't it? When people come together, we take risks, it works, and then we go from like a comedy game show to a very powerful kitchen sink drama.
One of the things which is interesting, okay, it's not all about us, the team that made it, but you were suggesting, Sara, like, oh, can we have a kind of touch of the Captain Pugwash type of animation here? And actually, Mitch came up with it on the day, because I remember sitting with him in the kind of mock TV studio area with his laptop, and it's okay, we can have this duck here for one of the climate change videos and stuff, and instantly creating it, which does have a kind of almost subliminal reminder of these animations that we saw when we were children, because we are in this demographic. And I think aesthetically, in terms of the look of the production, even though it's futuristic, it harks back to that period as well. So it means that our demographic will be able to relate to it. That's the thing.
Thank you. I mean, actually, you just mentioned the family tea video there, and obviously that takes quite a different perspective. This isn't comedy. This is a drama. It's emotional. It's intense. I mean, I've watched it many times, and it still makes me tear up. And I'm not a particularly emotional person, but I find that it really sort of really quite touches me. So, can you explain? Obviously, you utilizing dramatization in order to motivate some sort of reflection. So how did you think about what the potential limitations for actually changing people's viewpoints were, as well as how we would encourage people to take that reflexive, momentary smidge of a step back from diving down that rabbit hole.
I watch a lot of videos personally on how actors work, and one of the things which I think is interesting is when they look at a script, they ask themselves, does this actor exist? Does this character exist outside the script? And I felt like that's what we'd done. We created a backstory. We'd created this backstory to these characters. So we wanted to show a kind of narrative arc in their life as to why they got to this point. And the more I watch Family Tea, the more I can see that with the central character, that we show that she's watched a lot of videos. So we know, some media scholars would dismiss some of this, but we know that you can get pushed through what you take in, advertising. That's what it is. We know it causes people to make certain choices. So in our script, we say, okay, she joined these communities. Her husband challenges her on this and says, well, do you know these people? Her son challenges her on this, saying, well, actually, the mainstream media, there is legal ramifications to what every company does, like the BBC, but she doesn't really care about that. But this is because she's been emotionally affected because of her job. So we are not saying that she's irrational. We're not saying that she has mental health issues. We're not saying that she's wrong. We're saying that there's a narrative arc. There's a reason for where she's at. And so by showing rather than telling, we get people to just take a breath in terms of, oh yeah, if they're in that situation, would they start, I don't know, blaming migrants for their position? Or would they think, well, hang on, it's not a migrant's fault that I'm in this situation. That is not the cause of this. So that's what we're trying to do there with that Family Tea one. And I think, that's part of the story that developed through workshopping it, through thinking about it further and thinking about all the different characters. And we leapt about a bit, as you know, Sara, we leapt about a bit. We had the son's partner. Eventually, they were a Muslim woman from Kosovo. She was pregnant. We had all these different side plots. And I think you, Sara, wrote a whole scene at the end, which was going to be leapt 2 years into the future when the child was born, when the child was in England, and it was much more happy families. But we left it hanging at the end. And again, that's something that Ralph really wanted. He wanted to leave it on a kind of almost like a depressing point. It's like, hang on, will they resolve all this? More like a European independent film, than a Hollywood one. We don't know. We don't know where it's going. We hope they resolve it, but we don't know. And that's the point. So yeah, some of that hopefully kind of explains a bit of it. I don't know what you think, Sian.
I think it goes back to the facts as well, right from the beginning. And it's not a way I think lots of screenwriters work or production companies, but we worked on those personas, didn't we? Right at the beginning. We even had photographs for them.
Yeah.
We had massive backstories, and we discussed it for quite a long time about why these people had come to the place, the position that they were at. I mean, for example, our conspiracy theorist guy in the talk shows, we had quite a developed backstory that meant if you were to look at him, he had reasons why he had gone down that route that weren't illegitimate, so that we could feel a certain amount of empathy for him, even though a lot of the things he was saying were like outrageous. We didn't want these to be single, very one-dimensional characters. We wanted people to understand that there was a backstory, and I think all of our actors were able to project that sort of character across when they were doing their performances. So yeah, that was something that was really quite important. Yeah.
Put your finger on it there. The word empathy is so key, and that's what actors say, isn't it? They're just trying to walk in someone else's shoes for that period and get others to be able to do that. So you identify with the central characters and you think, oh yeah, it's a difficult situation. But I think that's the whole point about Smidge. We're saying now that most people know somebody who's gone down that rabbit hole. So all of us have to have conversations with family or friends in the similar way that they do in that Family Tea thing. So you've got to try and do it as sensitively as we can within the limited budget.
And what we all did, didn't we, was it was sharing of all your academic research, but we were all sharing our personal stories. There was people that we all knew,
Yeah.
and we talked about that, our experiences. I think it was over a Christmas, and we brought all of that to the table, as well as the actors.
I find that really fascinating because there's more and more now, even in academia, weirdly, about autoethnography, about critical reflection, about reflecting on, your own personal experiences. And this isn't all kind of like fluffy, lovey stuff. This is about, getting into the depths of the psychology, exactly what you say, Sian. So I feel like the sharing of stories that we all did, I think that's the thing. I think overall, we developed a kind of trust in the group of people that were working on this, where we felt we could bring in to the discussion our own personal experiences, and then that would impact on, we do have a personal understanding of it, as well as all the facts from the vast amount of research that's being pulled within the whole consortium of Smidge.
Yeah, interestingly, I think Sian, you said to us that the actress who played the key role in the family tea had actually personally experienced people in her family and friends who had fallen down that rabbit hole. So for her, she had an actual personal motivation to actually do this film, and because she had an understanding of what those people were going through, she was able to bring that into her acting role.
I think, as Sian said before, I think most of the actors would like to get involved in the future, and we should do an event and bring them back because, they were all interested in the actual research itself. Because, like everybody, they were pretty worried about, the direction of travel in a lot of European and countries and in the UK, politically. So that's why they saw this was more than just another job. It was doing some good, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
And just to quickly pick up on that, when you said, multidimensional characters, Sara, but also about trust. So it was trust between us working on everything, and then trust with the actors, and then trust with our crew. I mean, we had great broadcast crew who shoot dramas. And then we had Mick, so we had the person working post-production actually on the shoot with us. So I think when there's that trust between production company and the client, we were able to take risks together.
And also, I think that it's wonderful you're actually using that word trust, because what we also want to instill in the person viewing it, the person sitting there watching those videos, is that they can trust what we have produced, that it's not coming from a place of bias. We're not bought by the elite, those sorts of things that can lead people to reject some of these counter narratives that are out there already. We went to great pains to go, look, we're not trying to tell you how to think. We're just asking you to think.
And just to add to that as well, it just came to mind that, remember, there were a couple of scripts, particularly for the LBC or the kind of satirical radio show that we produced, which we ditched because we wrote these scripts, some of them, and then we thought, hang on, that could be interpreted this way, could be seen as being offensive because of X, Y, Z. So we stuck to those three that we were most happy with. But we did experiment like you'd expect. We experimented with other scripts. And as was said before, we had a real enjoyable experience, acting them out, doing it live, recording it, thinking how long are these going to take? What if we cut this bit, cut that bit? Does it still contain the meaning? And so on. So, these are the ones that we eventually produced, but there were some others.
I'm just got a final question now to bring this conversation to a close. But obviously, we've been talking very much about all the positive experiences, which no doubt, absolutely was a positive experience from beginning to end. But if you wanted to just reflect and look back momentarily, is there anything about the process or the way that we went about creating these counter narratives that if we were going to go and do it all again in the future, that you think that might actually help to make it more effective, or challenges that you could get rid of, or anything you would like to change or develop that would improve the outcomes of creating these videos?
Personally, I think if it was ideally, a timeline would be slightly different where we could get back more research earlier on, which would then be synthesized more comprehensively, which would enable us to do the background work. And also, I think like any filmmaker would say, you can get the actors on board much earlier in the process, but also some of the audiences, so there's a kind of co-creation. Now, that's a sort of ideal thing, and sometimes that can be counterproductive because there's too many cooks. So I'm not sure. That's a sort of idealistic view. In reality, sometimes it's better to keep it in a relatively small team and do what you do. So that would be my take on, if there was an opportunity to do it differently, it might have been cool to experiment in the fashion I just elaborated on. Well, I'm not sure that would improve things at all, but it could have done. I'm not sure.
I think, again, maybe to have had some of the research findings sooner perhaps could have helped, but maybe we were keeping it fresh. We were working on the edge. I think my challenge was always to make sure that it wasn't too wordy. There wasn't too much content. And it was always about editing down, because you had so much research, so much information, and it was always being mindful of interpreting that as a drama. But hitting all those research points and making sure the films engage the audience in the way that you understood through your research.
Well, thank you. This has been episode 12 of Smidgecast. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I will see you again, hopefully, in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a Smidgecast, and if you want to learn more about Smidge and our work, visit smidgeproject.eu or connect with us on X at the Smidge Project. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please consider sharing it to support our mission. Thank you for listening.